So today we have Jessica Ruth, Business Development Manager from West Coast Beauty Supplies. What are you developing, Jessica?
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me on board with you guys today. So ultimately, what I really like to think of outside of there really being a title is I look at my life or my career as a bit like a GPS, where I need to determine where I need to go and then how do I need to get there.
You know, when it comes to business development managers, a lot of salon stylists, owners, whatever they may be, can have the tendency to look at business development managers as just someone who comes in trying to make money. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, I love that you've brought that up, so thank you. I like to think of the fact that for us, obviously, we need to generate revenue, but money has never been my driving force. My driving force has been more from a creative standpoint, and as well, just from a standpoint of finding your passion. So for me, currently, one of my big passions is sustainability. And actually, within the last 2 years, I worked on and developed the program for Davines that certifies salons as a sustainable salon. And so a salon can now be certified through the University of Parma. So this is a project that I developed with them. And so that's not really about making money, right? Like ultimately being sustainable isn't about making money, but sometimes when we go about things from a passionate standpoint and giving back to the world and giving back to the community, naturally it attracts the right people that then does make us profitable in the process. So for me, that's one of the things that I think is so important is that you find more passion and the passion then drives the revenue.
Sustainability has been something that's really grown, I'd say, in the last 5-10 years. Just even in conversations, you hear it.
The misinformation or the missed part in the term is that people often think of sustainability as just the environment. But really, when people say, you need to live a balanced life or you need to be able to maintain what it is that you're doing long term, really, when we look up the definition of sustainability, it's the ability to maintain what we have, but also to be able to embrace something further. And so that could be as simple as if I was behind the chair, being sustainable as a stylist means that I can still do this in 5 and 10 years, which could mean obviously the environment I'm in, but it could also mean my physical health. It could mean maintaining my clientele. So really sustainability is a really broad word that's going to encompass so many aspects. So for me, that's, I guess, where the passion comes from is yes, we do need to look at the environment. And there's tons of different statistics that show, how quickly we are to address and adapt certain methods for our own personal safety, but maybe don't look at the world in a big enough picture. And if the world doesn't exist, then we don't, and so to kind of take it to that step further. So It really can encompass any aspect of what it is that we do.
Yeah. And actually, if a salon does it right, they end up saving money in the end, if it's done properly, along with, creating this whole new platform. In terms of sustainability, how different is it from Green Circle Salon?
So with Green Circle, that would be one component of the programs that I work with. So when I break sustainability down, I break it down into the planet, which would be where Green Circle aligns, and I'm very passionate about supporting them, specifically in a time like this where there are more single-use plastic and single-use items. Green Circle will take that off of your hands and be able to discard of it appropriately and recycle it. So for me, Green Circle would be more important than ever. But planet is the one portion. Leadership is another, right? So, currently what we do as leaders in the industry, a salon owner, that's going to be an important or valuable aspect. And then there's the people, so who we are all as people, and then the communities that we live in and that we support. So all of those factors should be considered when we're looking at sustainability, ideally.
Yeah, so it's one component of everything else that you have to offer.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. Glad to have someone like you in our industry. That's for sure.
Well, thank you. No, it's been It's been an interesting journey, as I'm sure it has been for everyone over the last few months. And so what I've done is I've spent my time creating new programs that work into different elements. So I've basically made it where, Tuesdays were all about sustainability. So I was hosting an hour session on Zoom showing different aspects. So, one would be, for example, the sustainability master course that I developed. So helping salons do that. Another would just be sustainability tips for your home. So, because people were at home a little more than usual. So it's like, what things could you maybe do? And I like to think of it as, we don't need to make huge changes. Sometimes just doing one and doing it effectively has such an impact, and it will also inspire others, like other people in your house. So, sustainability was my Tuesdays, and then Wednesdays I did sort of business workshops. And I made them open to everyone. So you didn't need to be a part of West Coast Beauty or any of the brands that I maybe have personally aligned with more. It just really was giving back to the industry. And it kept my mind sort of creative and engaged, which was important. So.
Yeah. Excellent. Is there other links that you could share with me that I can add to the description for YouTube and all that stuff that we're doing? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, for sure. I just set up a private YouTube channel on Friday, and I put them all up there, and I was pretty excited because it's like over 17 hours of Zoom videos.
Wow.
Yeah, and totally new content. So for example, Franco, with you owning a salon, if you wanted to and you looked at sort of the library and you said, I think this workshop, so one of them I did was called the virtual consultation. And it showed the value of having a virtual consultation, meaning if we know that we want to spend less time with people in a space, we also need to increase revenue and we need to be sustainable, then you have a virtual consultation where it helps you know what products you need, what color, and you can even refer the person to the appropriate products that you want them to take home, so that when they come into your environment, you're ready to go. Like you basically, bring them into the space, you get them going in their service, and their product package is ready to go and they're out the door. And you even can have that conversation of, again, it could be depending on your personal opinion or preference, whether you want to blow dry or not. But, we even covered things where there are specific masks or treatments that you can leave in the hair, that you could, braid the client's hair, or you could style it a certain way with the treatment and let them leave, where it's still the same value, but without the blow dry service. And I know that one is a sensitive topic, like I said, because some people feel they need to and have to blow dry to check their work. But again, if someone said, I don't want to, or salon makes that choice, there's different options. So that's one of them. And yes, I can send you all of the links, and then you can see what interests you, if any.
Well, and that's exactly where I felt like we needed to get you on the show, and it wasn't a thought of like, oh, we should. It was like, no, we need to get Jessica on this show because you always have the ability to look outside of the box, and you always are willing to share the external vision of what it is, and with no expectations. And I think that's a great idea with the virtual consultation, because the virtual consultation is exactly what we are going to implement in all of our salons because of all the restrictions. Having something like this, a coach that is able to communicate with us. For me as a salon owner, collaborating with you, hosting events with you, and always showcasing everything that you've offered the industry. You've been preparing for this moment pretty much the last 8 years of your life, because everything's falling into place with sustainability. Everybody's being more mindful of it, especially now with all the PPE and all the disposable stuff. Now it's becoming, everybody's thinking, what is the best way to go and be a little bit more mindful of what our waste is, and how to stay safe in the environment that we all call home. So I love that consultation idea.
Thank you, because honestly, Franco, you've been a great support for me and for us at West Coast Beauty and for the brands that we have there, because you have allowed your space to be available to us for education. So I'm incredibly grateful. But looking at your view right now with the plants, so there was a workshop that I covered that has to do with, sustainability and your salon environment. And so one of the topics is, if you think about plants, technically the ideal is one to two plants, depending on their size, for every square foot of space. And so now it would be more important to have plants in your environment. For one, they do help absorb ammonia. So when you think of us being behind the chair and being exposed to ammonia with color, but also they do help with fighting disease. Now, obviously, you're not going to get a plant in and it's not going to, eliminate any, issues. But anything that we can do that's going to, purify, it's a filter for our air and for our lungs. And then at the same time, plants do create a calming environment, and they do make people feel more at ease. So there's tons of little things that people can do while they're creating, barriers and space and all of these other aspects that sometimes make us feel sterile, that can be still inviting and warm, and create an environment that makes us feel connected.
So Jessica, what's your plan for 2020 with this new tomorrow? Is there something that we as the salon owners can do to make sure that we're ahead of the game, to not create such a big footprint? We are already one of the biggest industries to create the negative footprints. We're limited on what we can do. Do you have any suggestions for the salon owners and stylists to contribute to the salon atmosphere to help us protect this planet that we live on?
Okay, so I think there would be two parts that come to mind, but there will always be more.
Of course.
I definitely want to encourage people, and just to be clear, I'm not paid at all or ever by Green Circle, but I would definitely encourage looking into Green Circle, specifically if you're bringing on more single-use items. Because what I'd like to say is, okay, however you were operating before as a salon, if you're increasing your waste, you do ideally owe it to the world to make sure that you're not contributing to more waste. So if that means embracing and bringing on Green Circle for that, that's what I would recommend, So that's going to be one part that I would say for sure. The other is when I talk to people specifically this week, because many stylists have been back for a week, yes. You'll hear stuff about people saying, oh, I kind of miss certain parts of what I did have, and we're an interesting species, so to speak, because when we were first shut down, everyone had the panic of, I can't even do this. I can't sit still. I'm going to lose my mind. All these things that people would say. And then now when we're asked to go back to work, now people are like, well, I can't go back to work. So I would say to think about some of the things that you really enjoyed in your time and how can you continue maintaining those moving forward. Many people embraced or enjoyed time with their family or time outside or maybe cooking or gardening, different things that maybe they weren't doing because we had maintained and grown into such an incredible fast pace. So if we want to look at the best way to move forward to manage and minimize the stress that we're naturally feeling from what our current situations are, it would be ideal to be able to maintain some of those things moving forward. So if I was a salon owner today, I think that I would make sure that there were supports in the environment to be able to be more sustainable, so minimizing waste, but also, like I mentioned, creating a warm environment, because if we are used to, or were used to, say, touching physically, like hugging and embracing many people a day, and now we're not, sure, we're still touching them because we're cutting hair, but there still is a different feeling in how we are connecting than what we used to connect with. So for us, it would be important as a salon owner to make sure that you are bringing a form of communication and consistency to the team, and not necessarily even making it mandatory, but just making it something where we can connect. And I actually have done this with many of the educators, where we started meeting once a week by Zoom. And not everyone shows up every single time, but even if there's 2 or 3 people and it makes a difference, it really helps kind of keep that communication and keep that sharing. And then you can kind of touch base on what's worked, what hasn't worked, and share ideas. And it allows us to connect in a different way than maybe what we have in the past. So I guess to summarize it, it would be to find a way to support sort of, the sanitization, but also the waste. And so Green Circle could be that. The other would be to form a way to stay consistent with your communication and sharing, which again, Zoom could be a good one for that. And then as an individual, to think of 1 or 2 things that you've really enjoyed over the last, few months, and make sure that you're able to, kind of implement that and maintain that over time so that you can basically give your chance a restart. What are some of the things that you didn't like about your previous world, and what can you change now? I've even talked to stylists about, if you, and I feel bad saying this, but if you have one or two clients that kind of created a lot of stress for you previously, and now you're working with less clients, I'm probably not going to be running to book those people in if they create stress. And the people that I love and make me feel alive and inspired and fulfill me, then I'm going to be booking them first and rebooking their appointments, and so it's kind of up to us to make our lives the way we want them to be.
It's funny because this pandemic, we're all like, you just need to relax. You got to find balance. You can't work too hard. You got the Prime Minister of New Zealand saying from now on, 4-day work weeks is better for the economy. People are going to go out and spend more money in our economy. So it's better that they work 4-day work weeks. And now everybody's like on the millennial line. And now we're looking at millennials being like, oh shit, they're ahead of us now, And I just find it really funny how it's like, yeah, balance. Life is about balance for sure.
I think Vancouverites deserve a 3-day work week.
Who's going to live here? Nobody can afford even working 6 days.
No. Everything will balance out. At the end of the day, if people are happier, they'll be more well-adjusted, and everything just, obviously you need that time for things to fall into place. I mean, who out there would not want a 3-day work week? I do.
I don't want one.
Your days would be too busy. That's why.
Come on, if
I consider it work. I guess that's what it is that I like to be creating and connecting. So I don't really count what the hours are or not. So yeah, I hear what you're saying though, for sure.
If you were to run us through what it would look like if Franco was a salon owner,
yeah.
He hasn't done anything. He calls you up, you go into his salon. What would be the steps, the procedures, and how would you help him through a process of taking it to the next level? What does it look like?
Well, I mean, ultimately, when I'm working with West Coast Beauty and with the specific products, I would want to get a good idea from Franco. What are his values? Like, I know it sounds silly to say, what's your vision or mission, but really, what's your purpose? Like, what does Franco want to achieve in his salon? And then from there to be able to best support what that looks like. And at the same time to kind of say, okay, like what is going to be possible for you to be able to maintain from a sanitization standpoint, from a sustainability standpoint, and then to be able to find a way to communicate that effectively to the stylists, to the end consumers, and on social media so that you create your strong point of difference. And generally speaking, I feel like people are very comfortable and quick to look at the products that they're using from the retail or the home care perspective. What are the shampoos and the conditioners that you're using that maybe are going to be more supportive for the environment? But I think sometimes salons and the consumers are not aware of the fact that color is also an important aspect to support from a sustainability standpoint. I mean, when we look at the amount of waste and even the toxicity that our industry is in, prior to this, we were sitting, very high up there. Many reports I've read were like we were in the top 10 because of the fact that previously we weren't wearing any protective measures, masks, and even gloves all the time. So hopefully with that, we're not only protecting ourselves now from the chemicals that we're working with, as well as potential diseases, but at the same time to make sure that we're able to support the environment, but also our personal health with those choices. So if I was able to find that that was an important part, then I would help the salon be able to kind of get from start to finish on how they can be more sustainable, more environmentally aware, but also anything that they want me to help them with regards to building their team and that environment. Because as a salon owner, very many times it is sort of like being a parent where, you kind of implement and you share certain things, but then the parent just kind of gets dismissed for their ideas. Whereas when you have another outside source coming in, it can be more effective that way. And because I work so much with Zoom, these are ways that, we could say work with Franco's team. And if someone couldn't make it, they could watch a recording. and even if there was a new hire, there's recordings on product knowledge, on color knowledge. There's so many different systems that can be put in place that still allow people to have that downtime. So Franco hires a stylist, she's, let's just say, because I was a single mom for many years, she's a single mom, she likes to be active, she could literally be watching or listening to a recording while she's doing something else and still be able to be very present and very dedicated to Franco and his salon and environment. So there's really so many different ways. And I just, again, like to look at it a bit like that GPS of like, where do you want to be? And then I will love and embrace helping you get there, because that's kind of like what keeps me alive.
There's a lot of salons, they don't even have a choice right now, because with where the world is going, I think you're right. Consumers are going to be looking for salons that are going to be doing their part. And the salons that, because let's be honest, there's so many different levels of salons. There's salons that are exactly in line with what we're referring to right now, the sustainability, good environment, all that great stuff, treating their staff well. But then there's salons that are more business focused. So they're so busy running their salon and, turning over profits that might not be a priority right now. But I think it's going to have to be a priority, because if they don't, I think one day they're going to find that it's possible that their clientele base might slowly start going down.
I very first opened my salon, and like anyone else, a huge growing process. There are things that I would recommend, and then there's things that I would say, please never do what I did. But we all have to go down that road to learn and to grow. But, in the beginning, I really wanted to keep everyone happy. And so I was that salon owner that would have multiple brands and multiple bits and pieces here and there. And so one of the downsides of that is that every time that you have a product line with you, is the more you embrace it, the higher the purchases, the higher the sales, the stronger the branding. Like, the consumer understands what your vision and your mission is. And they also are going to, as a salon, you're going to get a better return on sort of back bar support, but also education and support, such as someone like myself. So if you embrace a line more, then you get more of that. You also start to attract stylists that like that brand or like that way of being with a culture. So I would recommend that type of an approach, where you really kind of embrace something from front to back, like meaning, the home care, the take home, the retail, as well as the color. And then at any point, if you really wanted to become like a retail, company where you're known for how and where you're going to shop with retail, then that's great. But if you're going to do that, my recommendation would be to go deep and hard in that way, so that everyone is really aware that that's your like hairdressing Sephora, so to speak, of where to go, so that you don't kind of get caught in having tons of overhead that's not turning over. You're not getting tons of support, and you're kind of missing the opportunity of your own salon branding. So that's going to be something where, when I ended up owning and moving more into, at the time I ended up with two strong brands, I was able to see retail sales increase, which then allowed me to use some of the profits there to do different things within the salon. It can cover the renovations, it can cover, special outings or get-togethers with the team. So, that's really, when we look at a salon as a business, there's really not a lot of profit in it, no matter what anyone is going to say. The reason that salons are struggling so much right now is because, the percentage of profit, everyone's going to vary in their opinion, but let's just say, no more than, say 15%, really, truthfully, in what is being, brought in. Tell me if I'm wrong, Franco.
Oh, I would have said like 7% to 6% in this day, in our market in Vancouver, because our market is mostly chair rental salons. And, you were saying before that you started with Stratosphere, which was a chair rental salon. And your price of rental then is higher than most salons now. So, and now we have 80% of the market is chair rental, and with the deregulation of our industry. So there's so many factors to it. And the percentage of profitability is at 15%. It's like, I think a lot of salon owners wish that they were close to the 15%. Let's put it that way. Like, I think it's more like 4 to 5%.
If I say why are people salon owners, I think it's really the opportunity to be able to give back. It's the ability to be able to create a space that you feel you can lead in, but it really is very rarely revenue. When I was behind the chair, what made me profitable is that I was a very busy stylist. It wasn't the business, and I definitely learned from that and would do things obviously differently. But there's very few salons that can operate and be profitable without a person physically cutting hair to make the revenue, meaning the owner. It's definitely a trickier balance to be able to create. But
with your experience behind education and everything, what's your thoughts about the difference between our market in Vancouver compared to the rest of the world? Like, you travel to Italy. Well, you were in Italy right before the shutdown, so that's a whole different subject. But you travel all around the world. You deal with America, you deal with the rest of Canada, you deal with Europe. What is the difference in the markets on the education side of things?
Well, I do have to say I'm very grateful to be in Canada and to be in the community that we're in. I think that we're incredibly talented as a community. We are passionate, we are skilled, and we're dedicated. And I'm not saying that other countries are not, but I definitely think if we kind of look, outside of Vancouver and Canada, I'd say that we sort of fall almost in between the United States and Europe, which I think we do in many different ways, in just how we operate. We're sort of like a combination of all of it. And so what I do see is that the people that embrace education and embrace growth have longevity in what it is that we do. And if that's what you want, then that's an incredible path to have. And some people are just happy to have a job that they, go to for the hours that they do and then check out. And that's okay if it's for them. But I always say, part of what really has driven us to be where we are is that we're beyond that, And so hopefully we will continue to embrace education. From a sustainability standpoint, I would say being on the West, being Vancouver, we definitely have been leaders for sure. And that was interesting when I dealt with other countries to hear what and how they have things in place or what limitations they have. At the same time, we can't get too comfortable and think that we have done it all, because there's so many countries that have been more strict in implementing things to minimize or eliminate plastic from a structure of countries or various regions. So there's always room for improvement for sure.
Yeah, Vancouver's definitely had to up their game. I mean, you look at our market. I don't even want to keep saying deregulated, but it always comes up. When you get into that situation, you've got a lot of salons that are on the market that are having to compete for the business. And the only way you can compete is if you offer more value and more value and more value. And that turns into more education, more business education, and all these different things. And the standards just keep going up and up and up. I just wish there was more profits for everybody in Vancouver. So maybe that'll change at some point.
For sure. And I think, if you can find what you're passionate about and you can specialize in something, you will find that it is easier to kind of generate revenue and profit. Sometimes it's like if we spread ourselves too thin in anything, then it can be harder. So even in a salon like Franco has, if you have someone that's like, I'm embracing barbering and this is my thing and this is how I'm going to do it, or I'm going to embrace, being sort of a blonde specialist or color correction, or I'm all about curly hair, whatever that is. It's not that you don't work outside of it, but you'll find a niche where you really kind of can sort of own it and excel. And then that tends to be where you can create that point of difference, and then revenue will be easier to generate for sure.
What's one thing you feel salon owners should know in our industry? If you were to give a piece of advice, what's one thing you'd like to offer them?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Well, you think this is going to be easy?
I don't know. It's just always when there's like just one thing.
If there was one thing, I know there's many things, but if there's one piece of advice, everybody's looking at you right now, what's one thing you'd want them to know?
think that I would hope if someone is a salon owner that they truly love what it is that they're doing, because I think that that is going to be the foundation of where they will be open to other opportunities, you know? And so I know for myself, in any moments where I have maybe felt jaded or bitter, which we all go through stages where you can sort of feel a little bit of resentment or feel not good enough or judging. Those are times where it's harder to kind of attract that positivity and to be able to grow. So to find a way to be able to really enjoy and love what you're doing, and to also be able to enjoy your team. And so sometimes going back to that sustainability piece, it allows you to be able to embrace that as a whole. So for me, I think that the more people can embrace that, the easier that they're going to have moving through this process, even if it means that there is a second wave, even if it means that in a few months there's other changes. I think just changing your mindset is going to be what will allow you to kind of, you know, ride the storm. I have a saying that I say to my son. So I haven't mentioned this, but I have an 18-year-old son, and he's high functioning, but on the spectrum, so autistic. And so with that, you know, many children that are autistic, they tend to be very rigid in their way of thinking. They're not flexible. They kind of only want to do things a certain way. So I would draw these different analogies for him, and I'd say, okay, so if you were a tree and you were really stiff and a storm came, you know, and the wind blew, you would basically kind of like break and fall over. Whereas if you were flexible, you'd have the ability to sort of be like some of those trees that just you kind of see swaying in the wind, and then the storm passes and they're still kind of there. So with that, it's like the more flexibility, the more openness that we have towards ourselves and others, I think that we will have the ability to get through this and to grow and to be profitable.
I like that. How would you fit? How do we fit that on a cup?
Yeah, right. It'd go like around. That sounds. I love
We'll
that.
shorten it.
That is exactly what a salon owner and stylist need to hear. Moving forward into this new tomorrow, like we all have to adapt, and yesterday is yesterday and today is like could be tomorrow, so we have to really focus on adapting. That's beautiful.
Yeah. How can people yes, thank you. How can people find you if anybody wanted to get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to reach you?
Probably the best way is going to be actually just through Instagram. I don't know why, it just feels like that's kind of like a easier way than just like blasting my phone number, which you can find anywhere anyhow. But I'm at WC Beauty Jess. So it basically is short for West Coast Beauty. So it's WC Beauty Jess.
Beauty Jess.
Yeah. So that's going to be probably the easiest way. And my email is also that. So it's wcbeautyjess@gmail.com.
I have a question for you about your coaching. Your business coaching is open to all people, or is it just West Coast clients? Are you open to having people, because some people don't interact with too much of a West Coast, like the West Coast family. So can other salon owners that might not be or part of West Coast, could they still reach out to you to get some education and coaching and all that from you?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's important for us to make sure that our audience knows to, you know, reach out to Jess. You've been one of my coaches. You've been a friend, a dear friend of mine for many years now. And I've learned so much from just having a couple drinks with you, or just to, well, you don't drink. I was usually the one drinking.
Oh, now you got to tell us, Franco.
Now you got to cut that out.
What's the one thing that you took away from Jess in your time being with her in terms of learning something that you felt was knowledgeable?
Oh, she just stated it, staying flexible. I've known her for so many years, and she's just been such a visionary. But every time I've talked to her, her vision is very pure, and the intentions are always the same, but they're always adapting to tomorrow's market. And I think that's where her and I have always had a really easy way to communicate, a really easy way to collaborate. We've done like 8 different shows in our salon, I think, with you, that you've hosted or that you've brought artists from around the world. So I think that is something that like is, you can't even put a price tag to it, because I feel like the relationship alone has such a value to it. So I think everyone can learn a lot from from Jessica about just being more pliable, and this industry is about creating. It's not just about creating hair, it's about creating your vision that you want people to experience. And she explained that the best way. Like I love the way you explained it to your son.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for us, Jess?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'd have a few. I'd love to know how you guys first met. And I'd also love to know sort of like what your goal is, or what your projects that you have in the works are, if you're open to sharing them.
Yeah, well, we spoke about this in our last interview. We both come from mob families, and
Okay, good.
Stop doing that. No, I'm just kidding.
So I'm not.
No, I'm totally kidding.
We're just kidding. We met through the industry about 14 years ago. I became a hairstylist, and then I was joining the TG family as an educator under Charlene Santaga. And then me and Terenzio met through Modern Beauty. And then right away, the Italian connection hit right away. And then we started just developing a relationship. And then when I opened up my salon, I kind of pushed him into being in my territory a little bit more, because I knew that me and him had to work together somehow. And ever since then, it's just been a growing relationship outside of the salon as well. And then when this crisis happened and everything, I had a couple ideas, and he had the same ideas, and we started talking. And then, our relationship became a partnership on YouTube.
We've always had this common goal for the good of good in our intentions with anything that we do, not just with the hair industry or the salon, just even our conversations, we get it. I ended up creating a brand called Before the Chair. I know it sounds like behind the chair. Before the Chair is a concept of things you should know from industry professionals before you're actually doing anything behind the chair. Hairfellas is an extension specifically to the Vancouver market. Two guys, myself and Franco. He's been on the hair side, successful salon owner. I've been on the product side. We thought it would be actually a perfect marriage because we come from the same industry, but opposite ends.
We want to allow the opportunity for you to ask a question so we can find the answers as well, and allow everybody to connect and hear the stories behind the person. And we're like, literally every time we talk, Jess, we're like, so should we go maybe this route? Should we do this next time? Like, and we're always trying to add and make it better. So.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. I think what you guys are doing is amazing. I'm grateful for the opportunity to connect with you guys and to hear more about what you have going on. I love the fact that you're also passionate, that you're resilient too, and that you want to be dedicated and support the industry and the community that we're in. So I'm grateful. So thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. If anybody has any comments, questions, or concerns about our conversation today with Jess, make sure you put them in the comments below.